Travis Hunter
T-Honey
is sending people in all different types of directions with their opinions. Some people are saying he's going to be the first overall pick, generational talent. Other people are saying he's going to have to pick corner or receiver. I know he's going into the combine as a corner.
Smart man.
And is he really the number one overall corner prospect individually or the number one overall receiver prospect individually? If he's only going to play one of those, should he be drafted accordingly by a position? Or is he really, really one of the once in a 20-year type of player that is going to give you an all-pro level talent on both sides of the ball, in which case, obviously, he's worthy of as high of a draft capital pick as you can spend on him. So last season, the question is he worthy of a top 3 overall pick? You can say where you think he should go, whatever, what you think about it, but we'll go around the table. Last season, he had 1,258 receiving yards, which put him in the top 5, 15 touchdowns, most in college football, 35 tackles on defense, 4 interceptions, and 1 fumble. ESPN had him rated as the number 2 overall cornerback that performed last season. So, Mario, I want to start with you here. When you're looking at these teams drafting, I guess don't look at the teams picking as much as where you would put him as a prospect. Like, would you take him with the top 3 pick? I know it kind of gets weird when you look at the teams. You're like, well, I mean, Tennessee needs a quarterback, blah, blah, blah. But, like, forget about the teams needing positions for a second.
Pure talent.
Yeah, where would you rank him on this draft board?
It's definitely tough. I think he's for sure, without a question, a top 10 prospect. Like, I just don't think you can argue that from what he did on both sides of the ball. Regardless if he's going to pan out, as one position or one position player, or maybe he plays both in the NFL. I just think what he did, like, there's not many players that can just physically do what he did.
The endurance.
Yeah, the endurance and stamina
snap,
you need is just crazy. So I think he's for sure top 10. When you get to top 5, it's tricky because I think, in my opinion, you have 2 quarterbacks, no matter what, that are going to be that top 5 prospect. You have an edge rusher from Penn State, and then you got Will Campbell, and then it's like, I'm sure you could find another defensive player, offensive lineman. You know what I mean? Like, positions that really affect a team. When you look at positions that come in and have immediate success, it's usually quarterback, defensive end and edge rusher, or some type of lineman, and then maybe like running back. So it's really hard for him to I think Ryan's mentioned this too in past podcasts, but like corners don't really affect the game that much. No. We look at the person who just won the Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL, Pat Surtain. Like, he's great.
First round playoff bounce.
First round playoff bounce. He was there before they had a good quarterback, and it's not like they were really winning a ton of games.
Yeah, who affected that team more?
Who affected the team?
Bo Nix or Patrick Surtain.
So it's like if he's he's coming into the combine as just a corner.
He did have to pick one. He did
have to pick one,
so
and
that's what he selected.
I think people say that's naturally probably a better position for him.
For sure.
So I don't know. I think you could easily argue that he's not a top 5 prospect. Without a doubt, he's top 10. I personally don't think, though, him going to the NFL is going to be a long-lived career.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he'll be good. And I actually do think, at least in this first season, he'll play both sides of the ball. Not every snap like he did in college. I just don't think there's any way. The type of beating and,
no chance.
And kind of how perfect you have to be is going to just require a lot more out of him. And I don't think he'll be able to do that on both sides of the ball. But I do think he's going to be a full-time cornerback and then probably, play some spots in like first halves and
like thought packages for him.
Yeah, have some packages for him. And then, if a game's ever close, definitely he'll probably play every offensive snap, but that's kind of like you're looking more at a quarter situation. I just don't think, though, long-term he'll be able to sustain that. And I don't think he's going to be some type of elite corner like Pat Surtain or one of those guys that's like viewed as the best. I don't think he'll be bad, though. I just think he'll be kind of mid. He'll have a decently long career in the sense of like, he was a Heisman, and you can ride those coattails an extra, 2-3 years. That can kind of extend your career. But in terms of him being kind of like a household player, I think maybe that lasts
not an all pro guy.
He might be like Pro Bowler twice.
That doesn't mean anything.
I was talking all pro.
Yeah, all pro.
First team, second team, all pro, top 4 corner in the
all
league.
pro. He might have one in him.
I mean, that'd be a good.
He might have one in him. But like I said, I just don't see this
Okay.
really lasting long.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I actually almost align perfectly with Mario there. In terms of is he a top 3 value, I almost will instantaneously say no. My thinking of that actually came more so from Ryan, who when we talk about drafts, he says a lot more about offensive line, defensive edge rushers. And then, you can kind of toss in quarterbacks there a little bit. And so for that reason, immediately similar to Mario, I would go Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, and then Will Campbell for sure. Top 5, I think I'm similarly where it's like, I would probably toss in, heavily biased, but Kelvin Banks I think is going to be a top prospect there as well. When it comes to like Travis Hunter and how his career is going to pan out, I think cornerback is 100% the right decision. And I think definitely, probably personally speaking, I think it probably takes more ability or like physical attributes to play corner than it does wide receiver, only in the fact that, you have to know like the mindset of a receiver to guard a receiver like that. And so I think, that's going to show his capabilities. I can't imagine he ever sees an offensive snap when he does lock in playing cornerback in the NFL. The reason why I think that is because, I think he was able to play around.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Well, just in my opinion, I think he was able to bounce back and forth on both sides of the ball because he felt like he was at the top of his game in both positions. And when you go to the NFL, when the caliber of competition is so much higher, he's not going to be a top cornerback. And I think he's probably going to be one of those guys who's going to grind down to where he tries to get that. I don't think he's going to have that comparatively to the guys who have been playing corner their whole life, who have, kind of just developed everything into this defensive mindset.
If we're being honest, I just want to press you a little on this.
What's up?
So he's getting drafted to a team with a top 5, top 10 pick, right?
Yeah.
You're telling me he's not
Like within top 10.
You're telling me he's not a day 1 starter talent at corner on those teams? Or a day 1 starter talent receiver on those teams? There's 1,000% chance.
So
he's a starter on whatever side he wants to play. And when you said he doesn't have, the ability to go both, I mean, if he picks either side of the ball, he's a starter at that. Why not? Why can't he do both of those?
I mean, in my personal opinion, I don't think he's going to – I think he will be a starter. I don't necessarily think he'll deserve to be drafted. If we're looking at like positionally ranking.
No, but you were saying he's not going to be able to play both because you look at the talent on the teams, he's not going to be where those players are. I'm saying his talent, if he was drafted as a receiver, he'd be starting on whatever team drafted him. If he's drafted as a corner, would be starting on whatever team drafted him.
But there's a reason he's not choosing receiver because he wouldn't be in
He
that
didn't not
position.
choose receiver. He had to go into the combine.
He chose
as
one or the other, right? So
No,
it's like,
That's not true. He's saying he wants to play both, but he just had to go into the combine. You have to select a position to go into the combine as. So that you do the drills.
so
for
he's
that
choosing
position.
to do cornerback.
That is the one he selected, but he's been very open, saying he wants to play both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean,
But I'm just pushing back on your logic as to why he won't play both sides of the ball. You said it's due to the talent on the teams, where he's.
in my opinion, I feel like he, obviously throwing myself into shoes I will never ever stand in, but like, I would imagine that he's able to play both sides of the ball freely as much as he does because he's playing at such a high level, in both positions. I feel like, if he isn't a top 10 cornerback against all of these veterans and pro people in the league, he might not want to be jumping back and forth, and he'll probably just dedicate his craft to, one position or the other. Like I said, I think, it's not.
I mean, top 10 is getting. I hear what you're saying. I completely disagree with it 100%, and I think the logic that he needs to pick one. I was on that train when we were in college, when he was in college, and the more I thought about it, if you're making him pick one, you are 100% missing the point of drafting Travis Hunter. 1,000%. The reason you can draft Travis Hunter so high, and I think he actually is one of the top 3 prospects in this draft, for sure, is because he essentially gives you, in my opinion, a late first-round pick on offense and defense in one person. He's like the equivalent of like a 24 overall receiver and like a 25 overall corner draft pick in the first round. It's basically like having 2 first-round draft picks. In the NFL, teams will trade starting quarterbacks for second-round draft picks. So I think you're literally getting a first round level talent at wide
double
receiver and
first
corner,
rounder.
a double first rounder in one player. It's almost like having 2 first round picks at the end of the round. I think it's an extremely valuable asset to have. Obviously, where he'll end up getting drafted will depend on the team's positional needs, but I don't think his career needs to be extremely long-lived. I don't think he needs to play 15 seasons to be an out-of-the-park success hit for the team that drafts him. They'll have 5 seasons on a rookie deal of a player that's first-round caliber, wide receiver and corner. Bro, if you're the team that drafts him, run him at corner and wide receiver. Sure, maybe you don't want him playing every snap. Maybe it's he plays, 70% of offense and 70% of defense or 80% of defense, whatever it is. But I think if you force him to play one position, then all of a sudden he's definitely not worth a top 10 pick. Because I'm not in the draft a wide receiver with the top 10 pick unless he's some generational guy like a Jeremiah Smith, that's Calvin Johnson, first team All-Pro, all ballot, everything. And corners, I'm kind of the same boat. You see the guys like Kyle Hamilton, he's a safety who is clearly, he was the highest graded player in the draft when he went out. Like overall, including all the quarterbacks and everything. He got selected 14th overall to the Ravens. And he's been a perennial All-Pro safety since then. But he was like a 14th overall pick value. So I think if you're saying, he's top 10, but he should pick a position, then he's definitely not top 10. Because if you're making him pick a position, he's the only player with this little asterisk next to him. That's like, holy shit, you could potentially get a starting, top 32 wide receiver in the NFL and a top 32 corner. That is extremely rare in my opinion. I think the stats prove it. I know they force-fed him stats. 15 freaking touchdowns, 1,258 yards. Forget it. If he didn't play corner, you're talking about him maybe being a first-round wide receiver by himself. Yeah. And then if he just corner alone, he's the number 2 graded corner behind Will Johnson, which I think is accurate. I don't have him as the best corner in the class, but if you can get a potentially Pro Bowl player on both sides of the ball and he wants to play both sides of the ball, brother, do it.
Yeah, I've been dying on this hill for a while. I don't think Travis Hunter is as good as wide receiver as people think. He's also, in college, you can get away with being one of the lightest wide receivers you'll see. In NFL, I don't think so.
You need physicality.
These guys are 220, 200, most of them. You get, once in a while, you get the Devontae Smiths that are 185 or like the Olaves that are 185. They don't.
But they fly.
But they don't do anything special. Devontae Smith is good.
Olave can't stay healthy, and Devontae Smith is...
Devontae Smith is good.
Devontae Smith is good.
But I'm saying that's why you get your one or couple every...
He was also the best college receiver.
Just saying, so you get the nut at that size. That's interesting. I know Travis Hunter has a little more height.
6'1".
The height. I just think at the line, it's going to be a lot tougher to get through these cornerbacks. I personally think if he played cornerback and put all his energy into cornerback, and because he played the wide receiver position, you understand movements, understand like routes and stuff a little better. He's going to be unbelievable. I think he will be an all-pro cornerback and go crazy. I just think it's too much in the NFL to play both sides. I understand you as a team reference, go all in, use him as much as you can. That's the point of drafting him.
I think that's if he's just a corner.
Remember, I don't think he's a good wide. I don't think.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So
where do you have him as a prospect ranked? If you're saying you think he should just play corner, because I know for you especially, it'd be pretty rare to put a corner super high in a draft.
No, I agree.
class.
So my whole argument, one of my favorite corners, Denzel Ward, was the 3rd overall pick, and he's been top 5 every year. Like he's unbelievable. The Browns have been nothing every year.
Yeah.
They don't do anything, and it's because corners don't do much. I personally think if I'm throwing out Travis Hunter, I'd pick him at like the 7 to 9 range. He's an unbelievable cornerback. I think Will Johnson will go in this. I think they should go back to back because they're going to be as cornerbacks. Travis Hunter want to have some packages. What are we picking first rounders for some packages on offensive wide receiver? Like you were saying, he's a starter. Like in my opinion, he's not better than Calvin Ridley on the Titans. If Titans were wanting to go to him as a wide receiver, I think Calvin Ridley is a better wide receiver. If we're talking about other people that are picking that high, I don't think Travis Hunter's as good as those guys. So personally, I don't think he's as good as a wide receiver. I see your point. If you think he's a wide receiver stud and he's this guy, and you're getting both sides of the ball, yes. But I just think it's a cornerback you're getting, a wide receiver that'll fade out early in his career. And I personally wouldn't pick a cornerback top 5.
I do think, though, he will play both sides of the ball.
I agree.
want to make that clear.
I agree with
I didn't argue
if
that.
he picks one side, I wouldn't pick him top 5.
I think he will eventually get faded out because of his size and the way he plays.
I just think, and kind of piggybacking off Ryan real quick, is I just think when you're playing both sides of the ball, that's double the hits. And I just don't see his
longevity.
I don't see his frame really holding up. Like he's gonna, in my opinion, he's gonna have to put on more size.
There's a lot more injuries in it.
You're not taking a lot of hits
But that's a
at
lot.
corner, though.
But you're making a lot of tackles, and if
30. He made 35 tackles in 15 games, 16 games.
Well, that's college.
It's
Okay, but I'm saying it's not
Definitely
like
a much more
teams like
physical-
you're
I'm
going
saying
against
the top corners like Surtain aren't out making 100 tackles a year. These guys are getting 40 tackles a season.
Still, that's
So it's-
40 extra hits.
No,
on
it's
top
definitely
of
more, but it's
going
not.
across.
Let's not act like it's like.
But all
they're
it takes is
hitting
one hit. Like this is the NFL. Like
That's just-
to my point is just like it's extra. Like that's just extra risk. It just is what it is. Like
If he's a wide receiver, but I'm saying if you can get value from him on both sides, I think you're just like. There's
well, I
no
think
way that teams.
I think he'll play both sides of the ball, which is why I'm saying there's more risk in him.
Oh, yeah,
And
okay.
I'm saying like if you have a person that's built just like a little, in my opinion, just like bigger and like stockier and kind of stronger. To me, he's just like Ryan said, light frame. You're gonna be just taking more hits. Maybe first season's fine. Maybe second season's fine. But like over years, those hits just accumulate.
Yeah,
You're
they
just
add up.
shortening your career. But I do think he'll play both sides of the ball. But that's kind of I want to just elaborate because Ryan kind of brought up the point. I didn't really explain why I don't think he'll have the longest career.
I think he's gonna be an all-pro cornerback. I think he's gonna be an unbelievable cornerback. I just don't think the wide receiver part. I think if it fades and he goes locks in on cornerback, he's still gonna get the same draft pick. As
Yeah,
he
corner
was
I
as a
could be
double.
wrong. I don't see it. I'm kind of like Tyler, where I see him kind of as like late first rounder, maybe early second rounder at both sides of the ball. But I could be totally wrong, and he could be.
Well, that's where I put most corners, to be honest. I mean, you look at where the best corners in this year's class got taken. Nate Wiggins at 30. No,
Yeah.
he went 30. Cooper DeJean in the second round. Quinyon Mitchell, 21. Terry
They all
Arnold.
went to great teams, to be fair.
They did, but my point is the best corners
He's gonna be going to.
Or later.
were in the 20s or early second round.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of receivers taken really high. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't look good. Ruomo Dunze didn't look the part. Malik did. But then you look at the receivers taken later in the rounds and you're like, shit, those ones are the ones that
Yeah, Brian
performed.
Thomas.
Brian Thomas, Lad McConkey. These are the guys that put up top 10 wide receiver numbers for the year. So, I don't know if teams are really looking at receivers going, wow, we really need to go spend a 6th overall pick on a wide receiver.
Do you
Yeah.
think that because there's more money in receiver, he should
I
try
think-
to be a receiver
Well,
more so than trying to be a corner?
I think his agent will figure out a way to structure that with the team that drafts him. Because I know, put it this way. If you're just trying to make a shitload of money, you most certainly should not play both sides of the ball. You most certainly should go play wide receiver and then just get the bigger contract. But I'm fairly confident, I think, that the team that drafts him, because they're going to have him on the rookie deal.
yeah.
And sure, you can try to re-sign a guy, but not a lot of players re-sign after 5 years.
Rarely.
They often move around. They get traded. They end up
Unless
panning
they're
out. They move around.
un-
Yeah, unless they're just all world and they get the max contracts, right? So I just think a team looks at this draft pick as you have 5 years,
player
relatively
in
cheap.
football.
Yeah, put him on both sides of the ball. Let him run. Maybe he's a Brian Thomas. Maybe he's a Malik Neighbors. And then on the other side of the ball, maybe he turns out to a Cooper DeJean, one of these
Quinyon
corners.
Mitchell,
yeah,
yeah.
and wins you some games. So that's my thoughts. But I get the longevity thing. 185 is pretty light, especially if you're, running both
we'll
sides
see.
of the ball in an
Maybe he
NFL
could
game. But
just-
yeah,
Deion Sanders 2.0. Or,
Yeah,
I mean, he did get coached by the
he
right
could
guy.
just be him.
He did get coached by the right guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of Hall of Fame guys say when they watch him play, like Warren Sapp and them, that they've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
So
I've never seen anything
Yeah,
like
I know.
And
I
they're-
mean, from what he did in college, the talent is.
yeah, so we'll see what happens. Let us know what you guys think. Should he pick one side of the ball? Bless
up?
you.
Thank you.
Should he pick one side of the ball? Should he play both at the same time? Where should he be drafted? Let us know your thoughts. Travis Hunter. We're excited to watch him play regardless.